Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. So I was watching a few of your interviews in preparation for this, and I heard you speak about religion quite a bit. And if you look up what religion means in the Webster Dictionary, you get something like a system of faith centered on a supernatural being or beings or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I've heard you use religion to describe things like punk rockers, for example, that's a religious experience. So my first question would be, how do you define what is considered religious? And then sort of as a follow-up to that, if, say, Sam Harris...
Religious is what you act out.
What's that?
Religious is what you act out.
Anything you act out.
Everything you act out is predicated on your implicit axioms. And the system of implicit axioms that you hold as primary is your religious belief system. It doesn't matter whether you're an atheist or not. That's just surface noise.
So it has nothing to do with divinity or supernatural beings?
No.
Or it doesn't necessarily have to do with those?
No, it probably necessarily has to do with it too, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your voluntarily articulated statements about whether or not you believe in something like a transcendent deity. So, I mean, what you act out is much more what you are than what you say about yourself. And what the hell do you know about what you believe anyways? You're complicated, man.
It's a fair question.
Well, seriously, people are complicated. You know, like we're not transparent to ourselves at all. That's why we have to go to university and study psychology. It's like, you know, we're not exactly black boxes, but we are the most complicated things there are, right? And we can't even program our VCR clocks. So it's like, how the hell can we propose to understand ourselves? And, you know, I'm existentially oriented, which is to say that I think that what you hold to be true is best determined as a consequence of an analysis of your actions rather than as a consequence of an analysis of what you purport to believe. Now, in order to act, you can't act without a hierarchy of value, which I tortured the other poor questioner about. You can't act without a hierarchy of values because you can't act unless you think one thing is better than another. Because why would you act otherwise? So that means that you're embedded within a hierarchy of values, whether you know it or not, or maybe multiple fragmentary and competing hierarchies of value, which is all the worse for you, by the way, because it just makes you very confused. That hierarchy of values has an axiomatic, it's based on axioms. And the probability that you understand them is very low, because generally people don't understand their axioms. But that axiomatic system is essentially your religious system. And there's no way out of that as far as I can tell. And you can say, well, it isn't predicated on conscious belief in a transcendent deity. It's like, okay, have it your way. But, you know, most people in this room act out a Judeo-Christian ethic. And not only do they act it out, if they're treated in a manner that's not commensurate with that ethic, they get very, very, very annoyed. So, for example, if I fail to treat you as if you're an embodiment of a divine fragment, let's say, that's characterized by the ability to make free choice and to determine your own destiny in some sense, or if I fail to treat you as if you're a valued contributing member of the polity as a sovereign individual, then you'll find that very offensive and become angry. It's like, okay, then that's what you believe. Well, if I ask you if you believe any of that, well, that's a whole different story. You might give me some radical leftist nonsense. But that doesn't take away from what you've... that doesn't take away from the fundamentals of your action.
As one final thing. So when you and, say, Sam Harris argue about religion, you're arguing about fundamentally different things, it sounds like. His conception of what is religious is very different from yours.
Yeah, well, he tends to think of religious thought the same way that a smart 13-year-old atheist thinks about a fundamentalist Christian. It's like, yeah, okay, you're just not getting to the heart of the matter. You know, and I just finished reading all of Sam's books in the last couple of weeks. And as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't ever get to the bottom of the issue. He doesn't address the fundamental thinkers. There are some profound thinkers, Dostoevsky's one, Tolstoy, Nietzsche, Jung, it's like they're completely absent from, and the same with Dawkins. It's completely absent. All that conceptualization is completely absent from their corpus of works. They don't even have an understanding for the psychological utility of religion. And it's a big problem. You know, you don't get to be an atheist when the people you attack are like naive fundamentalists. And I have some sympathy for the naive fundamentalists. It's like what they're basically saying is something like this. Look, we have an ethos that's valuable. You scientist types are casually dismantling it. What the hell are we supposed to do? Well, the fundamentalists don't know what to do about that, so they say, well, creationism is science. It's like, well, no, it's not. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a point. Their point is there's something valuable here. It's like, don't break it casually. What are you going to replace it with? The new atheists wish that everybody becomes rational. It's like, yeah, sure, that's going to happen.
Thank you.
Possible that there are, I'm sorry? That there are lenses, like postmodern lenses that we can view culture from under that can at times be more powerful and useful than other lenses. Like, for example, Baudrillard, the idea of the simulacrum and the successive phases of the image. Joan Didion.
Baudrillard could at least think. And I mean, you can't throw all the postmodernists into the same jug, you know, but I would say it's still Derrida and Foucault have had the most pernicious effects.
Okay, so you would charge them with the worst of the worst. You know,
Well,
opening up this can of worms that we haven't really revealed.
well, the problem is they didn't deal with it seriously. It's like you can't just say no meta-narrative. It's like, okay, how are we going to unite ourselves then? We're going to use multiculturalism. Well, that's really worked to produce a peaceful world, hasn't it? So you need a uniting narrative. If we didn't have a uniting narrative, we wouldn't all be sitting peacefully in this room. It's the uniting narrative that governs our behavior in this room. And look, here we are, all peaceful. It's like they're not dealing with the fundamental issues. And to slip Marxism back in as a backdoor route to having something to do with your life is intellectually and morally reprehensible.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Take one down here.
How are you, sir? My name's Steve. I just wanted to ask you about this experience that I had after watching one of your lectures that really profoundly impacted me, and I was wondering if you could kind of help me out with understanding this. After watching your lecture on Jung and just talking about his life, you started talking about the Lion King and kind of connecting what the intro scene was in the Lion King and the idea of archetypes. And when I started to understand what you were saying, I had this unbelievable feeling, like in my stomach and my whole body. It was just this smack, like this very intense feeling.
It's a warning never to read Jung.
Yeah, well, I have. I started with Ion, so that's
maybe
not a good idea. So
no.
Yeah. It was just this powerful feeling, and I got so emotional, and thinking up how to articulate this question to you a few minutes ago, I was just getting so emotional. It just seems like, it scared the hell out of me, that feeling. Mm-hmm. But it was also a really meaningful, so valuable, amazing feeling. And I thought, mm-hmm. It's kind of like what God is, or, yeah, it was just so. And I usually get that feeling too of after listening to like a band like the Cro-Mags or Black
mm-hmm.
Flag or
mm-hmm.
some mm-hmm. hardcore band, or that music is so important to me like that, and
it's levels of reality stacking on top of each
mm-hmm.
other.
And it just the question that just made me so emotional too is like, what could my life be? And that was something that I just found myself asking myself, just what. And I wonder if you could give me some extra stuff on that, what that really was,
Yeah, well, you gotta be very careful when you're doing something like reading Jung, because he'll reorganize your cognitive structures, and there's deaths and rebirths that go along with that. There's what you're trying to do in part is to, in a sense, you're trying to bring what you do and how you imagine yourself and how you articulate yourself into alignment. So those three things are the same. It's very hard because there's more to you in your action than there is in your articulation, and there's more to you in your action than there is in your imagination. And so partly what you're experiencing is an expanded sense of self and possibility. And you might think, well, that's a wonderful thing, but it's also a very daunting thing, and it can be a very dangerous thing. When I was dealing with all of this material, when I was writing my first book, I had to abandon a lot of the things that I was doing that were bad habits, because it was so stressful to move through these systems of ideas that I couldn't afford any additional mental energy being wasted on things I was doing that weren't together. So.
Hi, Dr. Peterson. So on February 13th, you got into a prolonged debate on Twitter with a quote bot, a Slavoj Žižek quote bot, and then again on March 9th.
With a quote bot?
Yeah, it was a quote bot.
No, that wasn't very bright, was it?
No, and then again on March 9th, actually, with Noam Chomsky quote bot. And so I want to ask you, as like the leading.
Because I'm old and don't understand technology.
Yeah. So how important do you think it is to like debate these intellectuals, and do you think that you won?
Oh God, I always hesitate to claim victory. Like to escape without abject defeat is a pretty good ambition. So, and plus, I think it's rather improbable that I would win a debate with a quote bot.
So some people thought it was pretty close.
Yeah. Twitter is a weird platform. You know,
it's complicated. Yeah.
It is a complicated platform, and I've modified my approach to Twitter in the last month and a half, I would say. I've been trying to selectively retweet information. I polled a bunch of people and asked them if they knew of credible Twitter sources that were producing valid, good news.